you to this closing panel on one of the giant issues of our day, one that might determine whether we have very many more days or not. When GM announced last November that it was closing 5 plants and laying off 14,000 employees, it put in stark relief, once again, for the 100th time, the fact that we as working people don't have common interests with these companies. The idea of a Green New Deal was already floating around. Actually, I should have to stop and ask, what is a Green New Deal? What does it mean? These people are going to talk about it, but what do you have in your brain?
Alternative energy.
Alternative energy.
Climate justice.
Climate justice. Be more specific.
It's a merging of the environmental issues with the issues around inequality and especially racism.
Okay.
Full employment.
Full employment. What a concept. I don't know if we're allowed to do that under capitalism. Sure.
Just transition.
A just transition. Not just a transition, but a just transition. So there's been a lot of discussion here in Detroit about this whole idea. The idea is to do away with this supposed antagonism between the environment and jobs that people always used to say existed, and instead say that it's necessary for our very survival that we start right away to do a different kind of production, a kind that would create millions of jobs, not destroy them. And we need to do this on a huge scale, not just a green roof here, like Ford Motor Company brags about, not just some solar cells there, but a revamping of our whole economy to keep the carbon under the ground, and it'll take everybody working together to do this. First of all, to win it, and unions are the key to that, but then to implement it, to actually get that work done. So I'll let our panelists get more into that. One of our panelists is stuck in traffic, so hopefully he will arrive. That's his chair right there. Sean Crawford, auto worker from one of the 5 plants that GM has announced is closing. But we'll start instead with Natasha Fernandez-Silber. Natasha is a class action lawyer. She's part of the Coalition for a Green New Deal here in Detroit that formed after that GM announcement. She's also co-chair of the Detroit chapter of Democratic Socialists of America and DSA in the House. And she's been working with Rashida Tlaib's staff talking about the kind of big ideas that we're going to need if we're going to be able to hand down an inhabitable planet to our children. Natasha.
Hi everybody, so I'm Natasha Fernandez-Silber. Really great to be here. I wish I was in organized labor, but like so many people in my generation, I unfortunately am not. But I'm going to talk a little bit today about how we can build a coalition and a movement for a Green New Deal that merges labor issues with working people's issues that maybe are not in organized labor, and do it in a comprehensive way that really does meet local needs, real people's local needs. So we're in a really interesting time right now where we are lucky enough to have reps like Rashida Tlaib in Congress and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who are making really, our 2 DSA reps in Congress, who are pushing forward the kind of legislation that we need to actually address climate change, like at the actual scale that is required by climate science. And so the resolution for a Green New Deal, it basically just says, look, this is what climate scientists say we need to do in order to avert civilizational collapse. So they don't have all the answers, but this is the North Star, this is where we need to get, and it is what it is, and we need to do it in a way that's just for workers, and it's going to produce the kind of economy that we need that won't produce another sort of climate crisis, right? But it's very high level, and so right now the right wing, the Republicans, are sort of running full speed ahead with a disinformation campaign to say, oh, this means there won't be any planes in the future. It costs $100 trillion, and that's more money than exists in the entire universe. So this is, they're just, so I think it's really important right now that activists rush into the void and start putting meat on the bones to say, this is what a Green New Deal actually means. And I think specifically we need to define it, and we need to localize it, and we need to highlight people's material needs and their material conditions and the things that they see and deal with every single day. So we, the day after Thanksgiving last year, General Motors announced that it was closing 5 plants and that 15,000 workers were going to be fired. That directly affected several people in Detroit DSA, and we wanted to do something about it. At the time, the Green New Deal resolution hadn't even dropped, so it was just a completely theoretical idea. There was obviously people had talked about this concept before, but there wasn't any actual legislation being proposed yet. And so we were thinking about, what kind of response could we have to these plant closures, given that the UAW wasn't doing any sort of like public rallies or anything. And we didn't want to just say, keep plants open, because that's not good enough. We wanted to say, if you're going to close the plant, we want it back. The people paid for that plant. Like, we literally gave them an entire neighborhood for the plant here in Detroit that's being closed. So if you're going to close it, it's going to sit there idle. We want it back. So we said, you know what the Green New Deal is? Is the city of Detroit going and taking the plant, giving it back to the people, and converting it to green manufacturing. And so, that might seem sort of like radical, but it's really not. We need the government to be involved in planning the economy. Market forces produced the climate catastrophe. Okay? Market forces produced a situation where, an entire region is just treated like it's just disposable. That's capitalism. That's, corporations and the wealthy exploiting people's labor, exploiting resources, and when it's no longer profitable, they just leave. And that's basically the history of the Rust Belt. So, after federal policy with respect to trade decimated this region, you just have decades of neglect, right? So what we are saying here is we need to radically rethink the role of government. We need massive government investment back in Detroit, back in this entire region, to get the economy going again. And we need to say no more disposable places, no more disposable people. So at Detroit DSA, we wanted to take the momentum. So the previous slide that I showed you, that was sort of our rallying call, and then we gathered a coalition of environmental justice groups to protest the GM plant closures, and we had a really big protest at the auto show, the annual auto show gala that they do. A bunch of rich people sort of celebrate cars. It's very strange. But we wanted to transition. We wanted to take that momentum and keep it going and say we want a local Green New Deal. So we want to put some meat on the bones, and we want to say what it would look like for Detroit and just sort of this region generally. So what we've come up with is a plan which we're calling the Great Lakes Authority, to remind people of the Tennessee Valley Authority, which we can talk about later, but it's a regional planning agency. It would be enacted under the Green New Deal umbrella, and it would be focused on the built environment. So again, the things people see and deal with every day. So housing, infrastructure, and its mandate would be to bring green jobs and economic development to the Great Lakes region of the United States. So the Great Lakes region and the Rust Belt are basically overlapping. I think you would just throw in Minnesota there for the Great Lakes. But it makes sense because that's why this is the industry capital of the country, because of all the waterways. So, this is an area with immense natural natural resources. It's got literally a quarter of the world's fresh water. This cannot be some sort of like economic backwater. We need to invest massive resources in this region, if for no other reason than to protect the lakes. Like, you hear the way Trump talks about the lakes, it's completely insane. Fresh water is going to become incredibly scarce, like, as the climate crisis continues. So we need this region to be stable enough to be able to protect those lakes and those resources. So what would the GLA do? We have 3 proposals: green infrastructure, green manufacturing, green housing. This is a region with tons of expertise in manufacturing, so to the extent things need to be built for the green transition, let's build them here. We have a bunch of people who know how to build things, and we have a bunch of facilities where they can build them. So I mean, we don't have to go into too much detail here, but there's a lot of things that need to be built. We need light rail, we need electric buses, we need electric vehicles. Let's do it here. Go ahead. So this is, the future of energy in Michigan. We're going to need to get to 70% wind and 30% solar. So we're going to need solar panels, wind turbines. And there's also a housing crisis here. So we're calling for the creation of 1.2 million zero-carbon public housing units, weatherization grants, and a housing remediation corps. So a group of people who would go in there and be employees of this agency and would build the houses. And just quickly, this has happened before in recent American history. We had a New Deal in the 30s. We had regional planning. We had agencies that put people to work. We absolutely know how to do this, and we should do it again. And the values that we think should come to bear are local control. So it's a federal agency and federal resources, but people here who know this region and understand what the challenges are should be in charge of it. Obviously, a just transition for workers, for people of color, for the poor, and economic dignity. So let's start calling for jobs at $25 an hour.
Yeah.
Obviously can't just make people have a union, but unions should be recognized and everything should be done by that agency to encourage unionization. So like I said, there is an agency that already exists. It's called the Tennessee Valley Authority. It serves 9 million people. It provides a public utility that provides energy to 9 million people, employs thousands of people. This is not rocket science. We can take questions later, but that's my presentation.
Is there anybody in this room that would like one of those new jobs, remediating houses? I hear Jessica raising her hand, Phil's raising. Phil, you've already done this work. This lady.
I got young people need jobs.
That's right. We're talking about creating jobs to save the planet.
Thank you.
All right. Our next speaker is a 13-year member of the Unifor Local 222. Unifor is the union that used to have a much better name, the Canadian Auto Workers. She's on the education committee of her local. She's delegate to the Labor Council, but most important, she works on the motor line at the GM plant in Oshawa, Ontario. And which plant is that?
It's scheduled to close.
It's scheduled to close. All right, so Rebecca has been fighting against that, and she's going to tell us about it.
Hi. So we talked earlier today, and it came up that we know that when we fight, we win. But something that's critically important part of that is what we're fighting for. On Monday, November 26th, GM made an announcement that they were going to close 5 different auto plants, the one I work at being one of them. It currently employs about 2,500 people with an additional 25 to 3,000 supplier plant members directly in the community. So this is a really big deal to our community. Our union responded strongly, and they have had a very, very aggressive multimedia campaign that involved ads for the Super Bowl, saying a message like, you may have forgotten, General Motors, how the Canadian taxpayers bailed you out when you were broke. You may forget our generosity, but we're not going to forget your greed. That's been, yeah. The workers participated when they made the announcement. They did a walkout. That lasted about 14 hours. The union immediately informed GM that there would be no more participation in their global manufacturing system, so it's just the way that they want work structured in the plant. There wouldn't be any more mandatory overtime. And we launched our campaign. So right now, I know that Unifor has done should really be given respect for the campaign that they've put on. What it's done is caused GM has come to the table and said, we want to talk to you. So 3 months into the campaign, it was announced that GM had approached our union to have talks, and our union identified it as constructive talks. So there's a couple of things to consider here. So the demand that we first made was, we want to keep our plant open. It was, GM is not going to close the Oshawa plant. That's what we asked for. And what we're getting, if the rumors are true, the high end of the rumors is going to be maybe 600 jobs. The low end could be maybe as low as 50 jobs. What the union has said is that they are looking to keep a base hourly footprint in Oshawa. Now that's a far cry from keeping the plant open and continuing to fight for product allocation. What you decide that you're going to fight for is important. What the union, a failure of the campaign that we did, and I don't want to take anything away from the campaign that we did, but we have very severely limited what our options for in the fight by not articulating a bigger vision, like you have with the Green New Deal. By not articulating a bigger vision, we now have a suspension of the campaign, and our union is at the table to talk about maintaining a base hourly footprint, which will probably equal the loss of still 5,000 jobs in our community. So, yeah, we know that when we fight, we win, but what we're fighting for is also important. We need to articulate a vision, and we need to put that vision right at the heart of our union's work. Now, the retirees in our local put forth a resolution for the nationalization of GM under Democratic Workers and Community Control. And retirees from St. Catharines have also put forward this resolution, and the members of our local the workers in our local have also agreed to it. And what it talks about is the fact that the government bailed out General Motors for $10.8 billion in 2009 and forced deep concessions on the retirees and workers. And I think that's a familiar story to people in this area as well. GM has made record profits every year since. GM's profits have been reduced by the workers in the plants and have been supported by all levels of government and by the community. Now, GM is threatening to close one of the most productive auto manufacturing plants in North America by the end of 2019, which would result in the loss of over 5,000 direct union jobs and immeasurable harm to the community. So we also note that whereas the government has nationalized companies in the past in the public interest of protecting jobs in communities, such as de Havilland Aircraft in Toronto and Algoma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie, Be it resolved that unless GM guarantees to maintain the current number of jobs in Oshawa, it should be nationalized without compensation and placed under democratic workers' control and community control. And be it resolved also that this body commits to mobilizing support for this demand through solidarity actions, including but not limited to solidarity walkouts, mass political protests, and urging the political parties to adopt this demand in the 2019 federal election. Now, this is significant. This is a significant demand and a significant ask. And it centers around the fact not just that we're losing jobs, but it's going to do immeasurable harm to the community. We need to look after our communities. Even, they say, well, you're going to have half the plan is eligible to retire. Okay, so through attrition, the harm is reduced. But that's not really accurate at all, because the harm is reduced to those individuals, but it's not reduced to the community. Those jobs are still lost to the community. The next generation doesn't have a chance to have those jobs. Sales are going to be impacted at your local stores. I mean, you look around Detroit, you guys know what happens to communities when factories reduce their footprint. At the height of GM Oshawa strength, there was 23,000 people employed. And we're looking at a base hourly footprint that may keep up to 3% of that number over the course of a generation. It's significant job loss. Okay, so the nationalization resolution is really significant. But those votes, the people who voted for it, involved a small fraction of GM retirees and workers. And though the local leadership didn't do anything to oppose the resolution, neither did they give them any profile. There have been no public statements broadcast on the resolution, and it wasn't even reported on our local's website. The National Union has paid zero attention to the resolutions. So, I mean, what this tells us is that just because we come up with a good idea, it doesn't mean the fight is done then. You have to fight for your good idea, like what these people are doing here with the Green New Deal, and all of you are doing by coming and participating. And it takes, fighting isn't just signing a petition online, although that can be part of it, or sending a letter. Fighting is getting out of your chair and participating, getting your body down to a demonstration or a blockade, if there's such a thing around here, It is applying a maximum amount of pressure. We can't afford anymore to not fight. We have not fought, or we have fought very passively, and we have lost. We need to change the conversation. I'd just like to make one more comment. This came up at one of the sessions, and it was said, we need to make sure that it's the community against the employer instead of just the workers against the employer. Because these employers aren't just hurting workers, they're hurting communities. Thank you.
Sean Crawford worked at this Poletown plant that we've been talking about. He had to transfer to Flint, where he's now working 6 days a week building, excuse me if this hurts your feelings, Sean, gas guzzlers?
That's accurate.
Whereas in Poletown, they were building electric cars, now they're not. When Sean transferred up there, he found a lot of his former co-workers when he worked at still a different plant, the Ligorian plant. Like him, they were GM gypsies that get moved around to the site of the biggest profits. When Sean was at Orion, he led a campaign against the two-tier wage system. He sold these wonderful red t-shirts in the plant that said, "No more tears." And I think he still got some. In December, you might have seen it, Sean made a video about the plant closings that went viral. We could tell you how to find that on the internet. So, Sean is going to give us a GM worker's view of why we need a Green New Deal.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for the warm welcome and for having me here. I really appreciate it. I want to go over a little bit of the history of Detroit Hamtramck Assembly briefly with you folks. It was built on the site of the former Dodge main plant that was built, I believe, in 1911, if I'm not mistaken. And also the site of the Poletown neighborhood, which was a predominantly immigrant Polish neighborhood. General Motors, in conjunction with the city, used eminent domain to take over this neighborhood, demolish it, evict 4,200 residents, and displace an entire community. They destroyed several churches, and indeed the only thing that remains of that neighborhood is the Beth Olem Church, which sits on the northwest side of Detroit Hamtramck property. You can only access that very, very old cemetery twice a year, so that's kind of a slap in the face in the community who have family members that are buried there. And now that we see, the sacrifices that were made from Detroit Hamtramck and the people in Poletown, clearly, it's another slap in the face that all these jobs are going to be not only eliminated, but they may never come back again, right? Because this plan is unallocated. We're basically waiting and struggling. And one of the things that I find really offensive is the fact that they're using this as a bargaining chip for the next contract. We suffered under Tier 2 wage structures. We suffered under so many concessions for so long. And we thought, oh, GM's making more money than they ever have in their history. Now we might be able to get some of those concessions back and actually have the middle-class jobs that we've come to take for granted in the UAW. But now they basically, flip the script on us. So instead of negotiating to win back pensions and to have Tier 1 wages and to get rid of the temporary workers, they're having us just look to keep these plants open, right? So the struggle is even more difficult than it was before. So a little bit of personal context and personal history. I'm from Flint, Michigan, and as many of you know, Flint was a community that was absolutely decimated by what General Motors did. I was hired in at Lake Orion in 2008 as a Tier 2 auto worker. Orion cut second shift in 2016 where I served as an alternate committee person. I really enjoyed that job and serving my members. And when I was back on day shift, a lot of other things were happening in Flint at the time. One, most of my family and a lot of my friends had left town due to the fact that, Flint's got a really hard economic situation and the Great Recession was very difficult for that Rust Belt city. And also the water crisis was going on at the time. And, having just got my transfer rights back, I said, hey, now's a good time to set up shop in a new city, try a new community, and move down to Metro Detroit and transfer to Deeham. So that's what I did. I moved down to Warren. Deeham had just added a second shift. They were building 4 cars, the Chevrolet Volt, as Jane had mentioned, the Chevrolet Impala, the Buick LaCrosse, and the Cadillac CT6. All wonderful cars. It seemed like the sky was the limit there. We had a lot of opportunities. It was a low seniority plant. I could get a good, decent job building Cadillacs and body shop. I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to stay there at Deeham. Metro Detroit really felt like a second home to me. Then around Thanksgiving, word got out about a shutdown. They were going to unallocate the plant, which is basically just corporate speak for shutting it down, right? And it happened right around the holidays, which in my mind seemed like kind of a form of psychological warfare. You want to announce to an entire community that you're destroying their jobs and their livelihoods right around the time of the holidays. That's going to create a lot of psychological stress. I'd been living in Warren at the time for about 3 years, and Metro Detroit really became a second home for me. So basically what they faced us with was a choice. Either we transfer to Flint, or we could possibly get laid off and forced out of state. And because Flint was my hometown, I decided to go back to my hometown where I'm building gas-guzzling trucks now. So I think, really when you look at it from kind of a bird's eye view, the entire Rust Belt is a testament to the fact that we cannot trust corporations, and further, we cannot trust capitalism to create sustainable communities, to create good jobs, to support us and provide for us, right? We have to start building another kind of economy that really encapsulates and meets the needs that we have as a community, right? Everywhere you go is a sign of industrial disinvestment in corporate destruction, both in Flint and Detroit. We need to start setting up another way of doing things. So big props and big shout out to our sister here who came all the way from Oshawa. I really appreciate that. I think international solidarity is going to be one of the most important things that we work on going forward to try to set up this new way of doing things, because these companies are global. They exploit us globally, right? And the only way that we're going to be able to fight them properly is by fighting them globally as well. So no matter where they go, they cannot hide from the labor movement. And one of the things that I was really inspired by that the local 222 and Unifor was doing, and I think we should do this here as well, is they're supporting a resolution and trying to build momentum around a resolution to actually take over the plant, because it's our sweat, blood, and tears that build these products that allow General Motors to be the most profitable they've ever been in their history. It's through our labor that they've made their money, right? Without us, corporate America could not exist. Without us, capitalism could not function. So if you're going to disinvest in our communities and abandon us and destroy our families and basically leave us behind, we're going to take back these buildings and use them to build, the things that we need to make the environment and our communities and the economy sustainable. There's no reason we can't use these plants to build solar panels, wind turbines, buses, and the things that we need to make the Green New Deal a reality. We have the capacity to make the Green New Deal a reality in our lifetime, and there's nothing absent but the public will. We have the know-how, we have the resources, we have the facilities right here in Detroit and right here in the Rust Belt. We could use this federal jobs guarantee idea to be one of the biggest boons to our economy that we have ever seen. I mean, have you taken a look at it? We're talking about guaranteeing $25 an hour for people, health care, doing things to rebuild our economy, rebuild our infrastructure, and make sure we don't destroy the planet with global warming. This is something we should all be behind, especially if you're in the labor movement, right? Because to me, it doesn't matter what we're building, right? If we're building cars, okay, that's fine. But really what workers want is good paying jobs with dignity. And I think that if you ask any average, anyone with common sense who's a union member, hey, would you like to make $25, $30 an hour building solar panels and windmills? Hell yeah, they would. Give the Midwest an opportunity to do that again, because we can be the engine of the Green New Deal. Thank you.
Make Detroit the engine of a Green New Deal. I think it was Sean that invented that slogan, right? All right, last speaker. Rashida Tlaib was elected to represent a slice of Detroit and the suburbs in Congress last November. Before that, she spearheaded a fight for a real community benefits ordinance here in Detroit against the watered-down one that our mayor was pushing. Rashida said, imagine if every time a politician promised you something about a development, you could hold them contractually liable. Since getting elected, Rashida has carried forward her usual practice of shaking things up among the gatherings of the high and mighty. For example, with the picture Natasha showed you, Rashida was on the bullhorn when 300 people were demonstrating for a Green New Deal at the auto show in January. And her constituents are among those people in the country that need a Green New Deal the most. So, of course, she's on board. Rashida always says, this is a quote, "It starts with us, with a movement in the streets." I always say that we should think of our representatives, the good ones that is, as class struggle fighters dropped behind the enemy lines. So let's hear about what's happening behind those lines and what we can do to build the movement in the streets.
school and that education. You know, my district, when people say, and even some of my colleagues say, we only have 12 years. We only have 12 years before we're really in a crisis. Our 12 years in the 13th Congressional District is today. Honestly, because we're at the front lines. Many of my folks walk out the door, there's Marathon, they walk out the door, there's U.S. Steel. 1 of 5 children have asthma, have the highest rates of respiratory issues among adults, asthma hospitalization among adults than anywhere in the state. It is, our time is now. Like when I think about the Green New Deal, yes, it's this bold, incredible movement to start thinking about. For me, when you asked that question, it was about we have a right to breathe clean air. And we have a right to good paying jobs. We have a right to co-ownership. We have a right to oversight. All of these things that are so interconnected to economic justice, racial justice, and so much more. Right now, 80 of my school got tested to our public schools. 60 or so, I think it's like 65 schools or so don't have clean drinking water. So I'm not waiting 12 years. I don't, you know, again, we are on the front lines of what it meant to do nothing about what we've done to our air, to our grounds, to our people's body. All of those things are happening right now to my people. When people say to me, Rashida, you know, somebody asked, you know, do you think you're a troublemaker? All these, I've been called all kinds of things. But you know, I always say it's good trouble. It's good trouble because I want you all to think, you know, many of us, many of the incredible squad, and there's more than just 4 of us that they keep, you know, pointing out. There is a whole new class of representation in Congress. And I gotta tell you, the real people, some of them have never had health insurance until they become a Congress member. Some of them have lost one of them has lost their only child to gun violence. One of them has a pre-existing condition. I say this because the majority of my colleagues, before we came, I don't know what the numbers are, but more than half of my colleagues were millionaires. They're millionaires. That they're in an income bracket that's completely disconnected with what is really going on with the American people, period, or what's going on with our country. And so when I think about, you know, these things that they label, all of these isms and everything on us, all of it, it's so bizarre to me because I always remind people, 1, we didn't run to be first of anything, but 2, I think about Chisholm, Congresswoman Chisholm. First African-American woman elected to Congress. You know, she came in, at that time, walking around saying, I'm unbossed, I'm unbought, was like, that's radical. And I'm hoping for that time where I was like, yeah, you know, yeah, like this is normal. And then you know what she asked for? That everybody thought was crazy? Free lunches in schools. Look her up. Look it up. Free lunches in schools is what she came in there demanding. We gotta feed our babies when they're in school. What do we have today? Free lunches in schools. Don't you ever let anybody try to dismiss us, say it's not possible. I'm talking to the choir, but push back. Push back when they say something is not possible. It is possible. And so much more is possible. And so when they talk about the Green New Deal and cost and numbers and everything, no. You push back and you say, no, the time is now, and this is possible, because guess what? This country's run by people, not corporations, not money, not all of these things. It belongs to us, to you. Pushing forward, you know, I've only been there, like 4 months. I can tell you, you know, even my election, just even thinking about the possibility of somebody like me being in Congress right now, Palestinian, Muslim, all these things, a DSA member, a proud DSA member, all of those things. They thought it couldn't be possible. But you know what? I want more humanists as my colleagues. So I'm asking all of you, yes, fight the good fight, but I need you in the spaces where these decisions are made and get across the enemy lines and get inside, because I need you to run, I need you to get in there, and I need you to push back. And yes, it can be done in plants and movements outside of the halls of Congress, outside of the walls of the White House, because that's where the only change ever comes. They will continue to say things are impossible, but we're going to get universal health care. We're going to get co-ownership of, when we get these tax giveaways, it irks the... I'm gonna be good. I cannot tell you, because I see it, the shift away from schools, from everything that is so important to our babies, to our families, to everything, clean water, everything. We shift it, and we do it in the name of jobs. They come and they romanticize it, like, oh, jobs. Jobs can't fix cancer, and jobs didn't fix anything. You look at what happened. They're leaving us, they're abandoning us. Yes, GM got bailed out, we got sold out. And so I want you all to continue to fight, be in the front lines, and know there are many of us in Congress, not just the 4, there are more that are with us. But it takes more of you pushing back on the outside. Don't just abandon and say, oh, Rashida, I got some residents like, oh God, thank God you're there, Rashida, I'm good, see ya. I'm like, where are you going? You need to stay with me. No, Natasha, I'm being serious. Stay with me, because I can't do this alone. I need you all to push back, because you see what they're doing. You see the attacks. And when they're attacking me, they're really attacking on your ideals, on your ideas. It's not about my ethnicity, my faith, it's about what I believe in. So please, our democracy depends on it. I need you all to be with me, marching. When I walk onto the House floor every single time, I know when I press that button, my stomach sometimes turns, because I'm like, I'm voting on behalf of 650,000 beautiful people. And I know and take that responsibility very seriously. And I want you to take the responsibility of holding me accountable very seriously. You stay on me, stay with me, and I promise you, not only are we going to get, we're going to get so many other things that are so critically important to making our families feel much more safe, more secure, and everything that they deserve, and so much more. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those remarks. I just have a follow-up question to the sister from Oshawa. Mentioned that we needed to articulate a larger vision, which we've seen many examples of this. Sean, he mentioned that we should not trust capitalism for our answers. Right? And one of the questions that I have for you is, in terms of pushing the boundaries of what's possible, as the Congresswoman mentioned, is anyone in any of the circles that you are familiar with talking about a UBI, a universal basic income, as a direction that we might be going in?
Oh, yes. Okay. Laura teaches at Kettering University. Okay. Anybody want to try that?
I mean, I think there are movements that are talking about it. That movement, I mean, to me, that is already valid. It doesn't have to, again, that movement will reach Congress. It always does. And so just know and continue, because there's been more and more of a larger discussion, obviously, in various circles I've been in my organizing efforts that we've been talking about, talking about a universal income and so forth. So, I mean, I could have never imagined all the years that Congressman John Connors was talking about H.R. 40, reparations, that now every single presidential candidate is being asked about reparations. So anything is possible, people. We got to keep pushing and believe in the possibility. I want you to know, it seems dark, but there are times of light that you see that your work is paying off.
One more person? Brother?
Is that the mic? Rashida, Tlaib, thank you, number one. You're the only politician that's ever knocked on my door. So I consider you. Okay, but one of the most important things that you brought when you knocked on my door, when we spoke briefly, was about something that we all need as a law in the state, which is auto insurance. Okay. I watched a clip of you the other day asking why the need for credit rating as a criteria for your auto insurance. That's just one of the factors I redlined. My thing here in the state of Michigan, I just recently purchased a 11-year-old vehicle, okay, to get me to and from work. Okay, for the minimum that the state of Michigan allows us to drive on legally, it's costing me close to $500 per month. Now, this is not comprehensive and collision. This is just regular. This is just regular PLPD, the minimum that the state requires. That's almost $500 per month. Okay, now you count that over a year. It exceeds the value of the vehicle. Okay, now all this money is going to all these insurance companies. If no one gets into an auto accident, and that's ideal, that's money that the insurance companies are collecting and putting in their pockets and going on about their business. Okay.
So what's the question?
Well, my thing is that if we can tax deduct our auto registration fees in the state of Michigan, why can we not tax deduct our auto insurance premiums, or at least a portion of it?
But I'm not going to subsidize their corporate greed. I'm not going to have the public, pay double, because think about it, like we're paying, but then we're going to go ahead and have to go pay for a tax break to charge the high cost of auto insurance, that they're charging us. What we're going to do is take away any discriminatory practices and non-driving factors that they use to calculate our rates. It is another form of redlining, whatever you want to call it, but it's direct discrimination, because they're saying that somehow, and they haven't proved it, that somehow our credit score, our access to credit, which got all these layers of structural racism involved in it, that all of it is somehow tied to whether or not we're a good driver. It has nothing to do with it. And so as a member of Congress, what can I do? Very limited. What I can do, because it's all state control, but what I can do is completely cut off their access to our information, if I can do it. And that's saying to the credit bureaus, all three of them, they cannot provide our credit scores to the auto insurance companies.
Speaking of insurance companies, do we need them in our healthcare business? No! What do we need? Medicare for all! Medicare for all! All right. Okay, Rashida said, I wrote this down, we, in our area, are on the front lines of what it meant to do nothing for all those decades. What are we going to do about that? We're going to do something, right? Who here is a member of the Troublemakers Union? Everybody, right? All right, so I urge all of you to go out there and make trouble. Thank you to our panelists. For giving us a bigger vision. We started with this, the very first step. How do you say to your coworker, let's do something? And we worked up to the big step of the Green New Deal. I want to invite all of you to join us for an after party at the Common Pub, 5440 Cass. It's about a 5-minute walk north on the east side of the street. Between Kirby and Ferry, we have a back room set aside for us. So I invite you all to come there, and thank you for coming out. And let's all go out and make